Hi, this is Craig with Goods and Guitars. We're back in the shop. We have the bottom finished. We're gonna take a look at that now. All right, so the bottom is done, and what we're gonna move on to now is the uprights and the rest of it. So this is gonna be the second video. Thanks for watching. If you like what you've seen so far, go ahead and subscribe so you get an update when we post new content. And if you like the content, go ahead and throw a like down there. If you have any questions, go ahead and ask them. We're gonna go get started on the work. Block cut out and it fits in there exactly how it should. And so what I need to do now is make enough of these to go all the way across 6 inches wide. So we're going to go ahead and stop the video from there, and I'll get them all made, and then we'll come back when we're done. All right, so we got all of the waist clamps cut, and what I'm doing now is I'm gluing them together and screwing them together, and then it'll end up being the full width. Then we'll get the outline and everything dialed in, and then we'll cut everything square. We'll do that on the bandsaw, and then we'll get ready to mount it in. So we're going to keep working. Y'all keep watching. All right, this is where we're at right now. We have the supports cut out, sanded, everything matches up, it's smooth. We've got it clamped together, have our spacer blocks in here. These are just a milled down 2x4 to fit the size that I need. I wanted this 6 inches wide. It may be a little more, a little less. It's not that big of a deal because the parts we're bending at most on a dreadnought 5.5, 5.25, somewhere in there on the back end. So what we're doing now is we're getting our height for our upright that's going to hold the device that we're going to use to push the waist mold down in first. And what we're going to use is this caulk gun, and it's got the ratchet mechanism, so we'll end up attaching this to our waist mold, and we're going to cut all of this off, and it'll sit in here like so, and the waist mold will be attached to it. And so I'm going to cut this part off here in just a second, and then that'll let me know how high these need to be so I can attach this part to the cross member here. So we'll go ahead and get that cut off and then start getting all this sorted out. Alright, so we got the back strap for this gizmo cut off. We got this done, and we're going to mount this on like so. So you should be starting to get an idea how it's going to work. We'll have the uprights going up, and then there'll be a cross member going on. So what we need to do now is drill a couple of holes, 3 holes, 4. I'll probably do 3, one here, one back here, and get this mounted, and then we'll go on to the next step. Okay, so we have the mechanism hooked into the waist board, and we got the uprights clamped on, and I took a measurement, and it's 7 3/4 inches from here to here. And so what we're going to do, since the cross member going over here that holds this up is 3/4 of an inch, we're just going to cut these 7 inches up, and then we'll put the cross member in, and then we'll get this mounted on there. And this portion will be pretty much complete, and then all we have to do is final assembly, clean it up, and we're getting towards the end here. So y'all go ahead and hang out, and I'll get this thing knocked out. All right, so this is what I've done. I drilled a couple of holes up in here in the top, drilled some holes in the top of the mechanism, and then I cut this block, and this block's gonna fit into here. And what that's gonna be for is to keep this from collapsing under pressure. And it looks like it needs to be a little thinner, so we'll cut it down on the bandsaw. The next step, now that we have this mounted, it's secure, it's going to work. If we turn it, you can see it wanting to ratchet. So, and then actually that was a good thing that we saw, because it lifted it up, and we want to prevent that. So we're going to go back down, make sure that this is centered within the waist of the guitar, and then let this fall where it falls. And we'll mark that here, and we'll mark it here on the other side. And then the next thing we'll do is we're going to drill holes here, and then we'll install a T-nut on the back side of this, and then we'll have these bolts like so that will go in, and they'll attach to the T-nut. And what that will do is it will allow us to tighten this down where it can't move. And then to remove it, since the T-nut's in there, we could do one of two things. You could take the bolt all the way out, or we can cut a slot going this way, either direction. That way you can just take this piece and slide it onto, and then tighten it down. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to put a clamp on it to keep it from moving. Make sure everything is lined up, and then we will go from there. All right, so like I said before, we have the top, it's attached, it's ready to go. This is centered up on the waist. We have our T-nuts and our tightening devices installed, handles, wheels, whatever you want to call them. So now what we need to do is the springs that will ride. So basically what we're gonna have, this piece of wood will be attached by this spring about right there. And I'll put a handle on it, and then as the wood gets hot enough, I'll pull this down. The spring will pull tension, pull tension, pull tension, and then we'll keep rolling it around until it hits here, and then that's where it's going to stop, and it'll stay there. Same thing's going to happen on the front. I got some shorter springs for that. And then what this does is it just pulls tension. It gets your side to the curve, and then it'll hold it down here, and then you'll let it stay hot for a few minutes. I'll get into that when we actually use it. And then you will turn the blanket off, let it cool down, and then you'll leave it in the mold until it gets back to room temperature, and then, or leave it in the bender until it gets back to room temperature. Then we'll pull it out, we'll clamp it into the mold that we're gonna make. That way it keeps its shape. And then you do the other side, same thing. And then once they're in the mold, you glue in your tail block and your head block or neck block, however you want to call it. And then everything will stay in shape at that point. The whole purpose of this is it makes it more consistent every time, and it makes it a lot easier because, you know, while it's heating up and doing that, you can go and do other things. Doing them by hand is cool, it's fun. That's how I've done all the acoustics that I've made. But it's a very time-consuming process, so we're gonna give this a shot. The thing that you do want to try to do is make sure that your springs are attached in the same spots on each side. So what we're going to do is I want it to start out here with almost no tension. So I want this to hook in at this point, about right there. And so what I'll do is we'll measure from that point out here to the back, which is 7.5. So we'll write that down, 7.5, and it's up 7/8 of an inch. We'll transfer that to the other side and get those done. So y'all sit tight. Okay, so I got everything measured out. I went 4 inches from here, 7/8 inch up. Did that on both sides. So first thing we got to do, we're going to drill a pilot hole for the eye bolt. All right, now we'll take the eye bolts. What I need to do is open this up a little bit right here. So I'll be able to, well, no, I don't have to do it with these because they're already open. But I had to do that with the other screws there. I'm doing 3 things at once right now. So I had to do it with these springs because they weren't open, but these are open springs, so I'm not gonna have to do it. So we'll go ahead and work these in. Easiest way to do it is you drill your pilot hole, and then we're gonna use a big screwdriver. Get it started, take a screwdriver, get it out here where we can work on it. Is that still in shot? Yes. Yeah, I don't have my cameraman today, so I'm working on my own. And we'll just work this in. Around the other side. And actually going in at this point will help this be more stabilized because it's attached at 2 points. It's just they'll have to be taken out to take the top off, but you really shouldn't have to. Only time you got to take the top off is once it's bent. I mean, but if this goes up high enough where you can work the side out without taking it off, then you're all right. All right, so now what we need to do, I have marked my board on a center point, and you can run your finger along that way and then go from the other side, and if the lines match up, you're centered. So we're good. So we'll put this in here, get a drill, the boogers out, no boogers. And then the same thing, take these last 2, throw them in. If you want this thing dead solid, you could run some epoxy in here with these, but I don't think it's going to be necessary. But you do need to drill your pilot holes or you run the risk of cracking the material, and we don't want to do that. I built this bench, probably 3 or 4 months ago, watching Paul Sellers' video, and when I built it, it's not supposed to have these gaps right here, but it's kind of worked out for me. I use it a lot for stuff like this, and then the wedges in the legs to keep it stable. I can get to them here and hammer them back down if I need to. But if you're in the market to build a bench and you want to save some money, go check out Paul Sellers, and he's on YouTube. The guy's a master carpenter, does everything by hand with saws, and but he can show you how to build a bench. This whole bench cost me about $85. A lot of it was reclaimed, some of it I had to buy, but it does the trick. And if you try to buy one pre-made, it's going to cost you. So we're going to hook these on here. All right, so we got it done. We got our side bender built. Just a handful of parts, some spare lumber. Give you an idea of what we're talking about. All this plywood, 2x6s, all this stuff was left over from other jobs. I had to buy the caulk gun, the springs, these little doodads here, so it makes it easier to turn and move. You don't really have to go that far. I do need to get some looser springs or some bigger springs because this is too tight. But overall, it came out really well, and it's going to serve the purpose. What we're going to do is, instead of wrapping the metal around here, I'm going to do the sandwich technique, which will be a piece of metal, the wood that I'm going to bend wrapped in wax paper, the heating blanket, and then another piece of metal. And we'll slide all that in, get our center line lined up, and then start our bend. Once we get to that point, I'll talk more about how it's done. The next series of videos are going to be over building the mold that all of this stuff goes into once we've got it bent. But until then, I appreciate y'all watching. I really enjoy making the videos and helping other people out if they're not quite sure how to do things. If you like the content, please subscribe, and if you like this video, throw me up a like down there, ask me a question if you have one, and I will get to answering it. So once again, this is Craig. We're at Goodson Guitars here in Odessa, Texas. Thank you for watching.